If we were discussing today the scandal of Jamal Khashoggi, we would probably have a completely different topic. The topic we are going to deal with doesn't make the headlines. It's not sensational enough. But I think it is a topic that determines the orientation of societies, communication between people, and mindsets. I was thinking of it as the two cultures. Actually, I discovered a recent book that talks about three cultures. Not the exact sciences, which we call the natural sciences, but sorry, Dr. Am, I call them the exact sciences. I don't believe there are sciences that are natural and some that are not natural. So exact sciences, social sciences, political science, economics, and the humanities. But to simplify the debate, we will talk about the two cultures. And I have seen all along, not only in Egypt, but in different countries, that debate between social scientists and the humanities and exact sciences. My colleagues in humanities and social sciences say these exact scientists people don't understand much about society. They have their engineering culture, their medicine. I have stories to tell about that, including personal story from my daughter, who is a medical doctor, and when she was studying psychology, she said, I have nothing to do with that. I want to go to my patients. So there is that criticism of exact sciences as being very focused, limited, not interested in other aspects of society, which social scientists and the humanities think that this is the essence of how different units function. And they go from there and say, for people of exact sciences, don't give them a leadership position. Keep them as experts in their field. And that is number two. We have the people of the exact sciences who retort by saying, social scientists and the humanities talk, waste resources by talking. Ask them about some basic laws that determine societies. Thermodynamics. How much do they know about it? So, debate. And I thought that we should discuss that among ourselves. We are lucky at AUC in the sense that it is open to what is called liberal education. And I wish many more schools in Egypt and in the Middle East could be so open. We still have the schools of exact sciences that are very, very far away, and social sciences that don't have courses like scientific thinking. So AUC seems to be pioneering this. And I thought it is worth a discussion. And frankly, I couldn't have better panelists than my two colleagues. Let me start with our main speaker. We applaud before hearing them. Let us keep that until we listen to them. Dr. Shaarawi, I knew him, and let me give you a personal note about that. I didn't know him before he became provost. And with the forum, forum is part of the provost office. He became my boss. is how I knew him. I was impressed. Humanistic approach, much more open, and at my age, I can make the difference between people. Then, I discovered his novel, Talk. I spent the whole summer reading it. And I was impressed with the historical research as the basis of the novel. This is the bridge between the exact sciences and the social sciences. You can see in his biography, he has lots of awards, including for that novel. So I wouldn't really detail his qualifications. I would like us to hear from him, how he managed the transition. What were the challenges? Crossing the divide between exact sciences and not social sciences, but humanities. Those are extremes. History and writing about it. These are exact sciences. Usually, when you are doing research, it is much more collective research. When you are writing a novel, it is very solitary. So even at the process of producing, there are two different activities. You will listen to him, then I will introduce our commentator, Dr. Tahia.
Thank you, Bahgat. Thank you, Tahia, for being with me in this panel. I think this is a difficult topic for me to talk about. As Bahgat just said, people in the science, they operate in a different way than people in humanity. We operate in a completely different way. And when Bahgat suggested this topic, I said, what should I do? I was not sure what should I do. See, I spend most of my time as a teacher of physics, so I'm used to speak about well-established theories, phenomena that are tested repeatedly, sound physical models, things of this sort. When scientists lecture about their science, they have all the weight of scientific method behind it. So we have all this weight of established scientific method behind it. We rely on reported accurate observations, sound empirical evidence, elegant mathematical theories, and well-established structure. All these respective tools facilitate our job, makes it much easier. It makes it easy for us to convince the audience of what we say to them, and about that we have a decent rationale behind everything we tell them. This is a big advantage for people working in science. Today I'm facing, of course, a real problem, how to speak about science and at the same time to say or convey my personal experience about literary writing. That's a real challenge. To make my job easier, I thought, okay, I'll go back to Wolfgang Pauli. Wolfgang Pauli has a quote saying, if you have a problem, you're blessed. And of course, obviously I have a problem today, and that's why I'm blessed. And I would like to explain in more detail why. Wolfgang Pauli, how many people might not, in the audience, many people might not have heard about Wolfgang Pauli. Wolfgang Pauli is a prominent physicist of the 20th century. His main contribution, I cannot list all his contributions, but some of his main contributions is that he postulated the existence of the neutrino. Okay. He had some sort of a matrix formulation of the spin of the electron. He formulated the Pauli exclusion principle. Okay. And when I say this, different people with different backgrounds in the audience here today will think differently. So exclusion principle, what kind of exclusion am I talking about? Political exclusion? Is it social exclusion, linguistic exclusion? What kind of exclusion did Pauli refer to, or did Pauli formulate? most of people with physics and chemistry and engineering background are sitting on this side. So people sitting on this side who have some chemistry and physics background would say right away, this is the Pauli exclusion principle say that fermions, you cannot have more than one fermion occupying a state. Okay, so it's a beautiful explanation. Most of you, of course, did not understand what I'm saying. So this is the kind of problem that we face. Okay, we use words in the way that reflect our specific disciplines and arise from our particular education. So our education and the way we understand our own specific discipline dictate the meanings of words that we use. And this forms, or this exactly what C.P. Snow has talked about in his lecture, or introduced in his lecture in May 1959 in Cambridge. That there are our education here, and he was talking about education system in England specifically, and maybe in the West. So education system in the West has introduced two cultures. And these two cultures do not speak the same language. This divide also has bared obvious anxieties between those who exist on one side of the fence and those who exist on the other side. So it has bred some sort of anxiety, because the people who are in humanities or social sciences speak one language, people in the science speak another language, and the way they use words and the way they think about the word is not completely, is quite different. Okay? The origin of the anxieties actually lies primarily in the idiosyncratic meanings assigned to particular words depending on who is using them and how they are using them. Okay? The problem which we are blessed with, according to Pauli, it isn't about assigning quirky meanings to words, but about the ways the two cultures seek meaning. So the two cultures actually seek meaning in a very different way. In particular, the aim of physical sciences, and I call them physical, not exact, they're physical science or natural. Physical sciences is to understand how the universe operates. Okay? While literary humanities seek to uncover the meaning of our own being. The methods used by the two cultures are quite different, even though they actually have the same objective, namely to figure what's the meaning of life. So they seek the same meaning, but they have two objectives in two different ways. The two cultures, however, use words in distinctive ways to communicate their findings. For physics, for instance, relies heavily, you have experimentation, and then you have physical models. And physical models rely on mathematics, and so the mathematics is the basic language of physics. And if you're not well versed in mathematics, physics will not make any sense to you. In the same way, if I don't understand English, I will not enjoy a play by Shakespeare when I watch one. Or if I cannot understand German very well if I read a translated text of let's say, Heidegger or Nietzsche, I might misconstrue what's being said. Same way, if I'm a chemist and I sit with a linguist and they start talking about linguistics, I will not understand the jargon they're using. This is exactly what Snow has tried to explain to us. So why I'm saying all of this, and how does this relate to my own experience as both a physicist and writer of fiction? I have to go back and explain, because this is a part of, I think the title of the talk had a personal account. So I have to go back and bear with me on some of the personal account. So of course, I spent most of my career as a physicist. This 40 years I've been doing physics. I'm teaching physics and doing research mostly in wave propagation, pulse and beam propagation. I spent 8 years in administration, so I had 8 years of administrative work. All this is typical for anyone who's pursuing an academic career. Most of us pursuing academic do the three things: the service, administrative work, research, and teach. Nevertheless, during the last few years of my tenure as an administrator, actually 1 year as a Dean of Grad Studies and 1 year as Provost, it happened that I wrote a novel in Arabic. Just happened for over 2 years. Tokar was published in January 2016. and few months later it received an award from for the best historical novel from the Arab Language Academy, مجمع اللغة العربية, and not to mention that was also well received by several renowned literary critics in newspaper articles. The question would be, why did I write such a novel, and how does this literary endeavor fit into my long career in sciences? Before I can respond to this question, I have to make a couple of remarks. Okay? I have to confess that without the encouragement of my friends who read the first versions of Tokar, I wouldn't have published it. Okay? And, frankly, I didn't think it was good enough, and I doubted the correctness of my Arabic and my Arabic style. I was not sure my Arabic style was good enough. Some of the people in this room read the first versions, and I thank them for encouraging me to publish this work. The other relevant issues that I would like to mention here is the huge enjoyment that I derived from writing such a novel. It took me 2 years. I wrote it between November 2011 to November 2013. After that, I sat on it for 2 more years, and I sent it to the publisher January 1st, 2015. Okay. I almost didn't tell anybody about that I wrote the novel. It's only the few people, like 5-6 people who read the first versions, who are the ones who. I was afraid it was the publisher would turn it down. I was not sure it was even good enough. The thing is, I always wondered, did the events of 2011, the following years, had anything to do with writing such a novel? That's a question that I'm not sure. Was it born out of my emotional involvement in the instance of the revolution? And I'm also not sure. It's the only thing that I'm sure of now, that I've been writing for a while, is that under pressure, I get more inspired. So if I have a lot of pressure, like pressure in university, pressure in the country, political situation, pressure because of political debate, pressure because of some conflicts with the administration in this place, I get more inspired and I write more. That's, anyway, so I think the events of 2011 stirred something in me, and I think it like jump-started something, and this thing is still going on somehow. To better understand what's going on, I'll take you back to my early years of my university education. Originally, I'm trained as an electrical engineer, not a physicist. And even my PhD and master are in electrical engineering. But it happened that I did a second degree in physics, and I discovered that I like physics more than electrical engineering. And it's different. Most people not in science, they think engineering and physics and chemistry are the same thing. They're very different. Electrical engineers, they learn a lot of physics, but they don't understand very well the physics. So in order to understand why things are the way they are, they have to really study physics. And that's when I discovered that I like physics more than engineering. The other interesting thing about physics is that you acquire better grasps of concepts and ideas when you teach them or when you write about them. So when you write your ideas down, you start understanding something. Furthermore, physicists in general have to continuously work very hard on achieving a deeper and more wholesome understanding of physical phenomena. It doesn't happen to you. It's not that like you read it and you understand it. It's like you read it and you understand a little bit, then you understand. You build the background, and once the background is big enough, you understand things deeper, you go into a deeper level, and so on. It's a very elaborate way of doing things. So physicists never actually fully comprehend their discipline, the aspects of their discipline. It's an endeavor that never ends to be able to understand the universe that we exist in. Also an endeavor which is full of surprises and rewards. The physical problems that have not been resolved yet are usually well defined, but they are extremely difficult to crack. And any step forward or any tiny progress is extremely gratifying. In the process of cracking problems, one gets really engulfed and obsessed with the desire to cross the boundary of knowledge and to grasp what lies on the other side. If this happens to you, you'll be looking at something that nobody else has ever seen. And this is what my professor, Ioannis Bisieris, when I was doing my PhD, told me. I sat with him in the office, he got a sheet of paper and drew a line. I said, we are here. I don't want you to work very hard, just cross this line. If you cross this line, you get your PhD. And that's what, I mean, this was a nice thing to tell me at the beginning of my career. If what I'm telling you is true about physics, and physics is so gratifying, why did I turn to literary writing? And how can fiction fit into the big picture of my life? By the way, I still publish in physics and I still teach physics. I didn't make the full shift, but I'm still doing both of them. Things happen in most unexpected ways. During my university years, I had attempts to write short stories. These undertakings ended up very quickly in early 80s. In 1997, which this is, I think is interesting, I was going through my promotion to associate professor in Cairo University. And I had to translate the abstracts of my research papers into Arabic. And this was not easy, of course. And when I started doing this, quickly became clear that that trying to express scientific concepts and ideas in Arabic is very entertaining. Actually, I discovered the vastness and the various modes of expression in Arabic. It's very flexible, very vast. And it's not very precise, which is interesting for somebody who seeks precise language, like scientists. It might not be precise as English, but Arabic is very picturesque, and the diction plays an important role in forming mental images of what is being said. Obviously, I'm not using precise language, because this is not field. I'm not a linguist, but how I felt was a sense of amazement. Amazement of how playing with words can create meaning and how it depicts the images that are being formed in our brains. This amazement didn't last for long. After a few weeks, back to physics and teaching. Okay. It only happened 10 years later in 2008. I was associate dean and I used to go out with collaborators and I entertained them over dinners, tell them stories and so on. And I had our provost and colleague from physics department and friend, Abdel, he was with me in many of these meetings, and I would tell the stories and he got really amused, and after some of these meetings said, okay, why don't you write down these stories? And starting 2008, I started writing down these anecdotes. It's simple anecdotes, but I put them into a literary form, and this was very entertaining. And I did this for every now and then I would write a short story and so on. I mean, I never published anything. I never said to anybody that I'm doing this. I did it just for my heck of it and was enjoying it very much. I still have what I wrote. I never published this thing. And 2011, in November 2011, I started writing the first chapters of Toker. And since then, I never stopped writing. I've been writing almost continuously since then, even as provost. I sat in meetings, it was board meetings, SAG meetings. I sat in meetings and I was writing parts of whatever comes to my mind. So parts of Toker was written, long parts of Toker was written in meetings. I'm having a ball and I'm enjoying every bit of it. Apart from all the fun, literary writing has helped me to tolerate the pressures of life, pressures of my responsibilities and duties, and to endure the dreary routine of everyday life. It has taken me to places that no one has ever been before. In this sense, literary writing is playing the same as physics. Remember the line that you cross? It keeps me excited about life, and enlivens my pursuit of deeper comprehension of universe and society in which we live, and myself. Before I end, I would like to go back to our original problem regarding the anxieties created due to the existence of true culture. The problem isn't only about anxieties born out of assigning quirky meanings to words, but rather about the manner by which we hide such anxieties. We tend to hide these anxieties. In many situations, we conceal our fears of appearing uneducated by shying from issues outside the comfort zones of our disciplines, or by putting on an unwarranted serious demeanor or stern look. You try to look serious. Such Such behavior definitely increases the schism between the two cultures and drives them away from each other. Here, liberal arts education actually plays an important role, and that's why liberal arts education becomes important. Because it plays an important role in providing adequate breadth in learning, or of learning. So people on each side of the fence can have some appreciation of how things are done on the other side. And at the same time, it creates opportunities for wayward drifters to rediscover themselves. It offers them the freedom to reinvent themselves if they have the chance and the courage to do so. The antidote for the aforementioned unnecessary seriousness is nothing other than playfulness. And this is something very interesting. When I was writing Toker, I started the first chapter, it was like regular narrative, mere narrative. And then I wrote one chapter which I went on a tangent, and I felt something that I'm playing with something. This playfulness is very entertaining, and it surprised me, okay? Actually, I have to emphasize that what I'm talking about is not playfulness, but playfulness rooted in rigor. You have to be playful, but what you're doing has to be rooted in rigor. If we look around us, we observe incidents of such playfulness in science and in arts or literature. Examples are rampant. For instance, Einstein ideas, some of them are really, really playful. His ideas about relativity. It's a beautiful thinking out of the box and being free to think in a way that nobody else has thought. And at the same time, his behavior, the way he behaves and the way he pictures, he has all kinds of pictures and sayings and so on. Crick and Watson and the discovery of the DNA. There is some sort of playfulness here. Picasso's paintings, Umberto Eco's Prague Cemetery, Mario Vargas Llosa, Aunt Julia and the scriptwriter, Naguib Mahfouz, especially Palace of Desire, Asr Show. He's very playful in Asr Show. And Yusuf Idris, did you have to turn on the light, Lidi? Okay, no. I can only imagine how much fun did Mahfouz have while scribbling parts of dialogues between Yassin and Zanuba in Asr Show, or when Al-Sayyid Ahmad Abgawad jokes with Galila and Asubir. If you read the dialogue, it's so much fun. Mahfouz was probably laughing while he's writing this. This is the kind of playfulness that I'm talking about. Recently, we are exposed to another form of playfulness. With the current advances in technology, some speak of a third culture, which is a culture of creating new things and then trying to understand them. This is technology. Technology allows us to produce things that we don't really understand, then try to understand them after. This is neither about comprehending the universe or the society that we live in, nor about exploring the human spirit and our psyche. The third undertaking is developing at a very fast pace. It is more proactive and has deeper roots in science, but it's also tinted by a streak of playfulness. It has influenced our lives tremendously in many different ways, where the boundaries of the known are breached ever so often, and these ideas that lie on the other side are turned quickly into products which are placed in our hands. Such unprecedented familiarity with technology and the vast number of invented products have created a new situation. This is the case because technology is deeply rooted in science. So this familiarity with technology sometimes means to people that think they are familiar with science, and has taken down science from its former lofty seat. Science had a lofty position in the mind of people. At the same time, because of the continuous invention of new products, technology is currently competing with the arts for novelty and originality. Where is technology taking us? I'm not sure. Some speak of technology as a bridge that will finally bring the sciences and arts closer to each other. Some say that technology might be creating a completely new animal that promises us happiness. However, many expect that such animal could become so much smarter than us that we'll never be able to understand it. The million-dollar question here would be, is such playfulness rooted in vigor, in rigor? Or is it just a shot in the dark? And what rigor are we speaking of if technology is rooted in discipline that are changing so quickly? This is a daring question. This is a daring quest that could miss the heart. And whatever we might say or do today, we are destined to cross the boundary of knowledge in order to grasp the new ideas or gadgets that lie on the other side. It is appropriate to end with a quote from Nietzsche that spoke Zarathustra. Probably most of you would be familiar with. Lo, I show you the last man. What is love? What's creation? What is longing? What is a star? So asks the last man, and he blinks. The earth has become small, and on it hops the last man, who makes everything small. His species is as enduring as the flea. The last man lives longest. We have discovered happiness. Say the last men, and they blink. Thank you.
Dr. Amr ends on a highly philosophical note. But with typical modesty, he says that he went into literature for playfulness and to get away from anxiety. But you have to have the talent to produce a novel. It's not for everybody. Lots of us want to produce novels, but are incapable of it. One other thing, when Dr. Amr was talking, I was thinking of other people who didn't keep the two levels. Yusuf Idris is one. He was a medical doctor, then left his patients and went into literature. Probably some of you heard about, not at the same level, but similar, Murad Ghalib. Murad Ghalib was a professor of medicine. Then he became ambassador to Moscow. Then, during Nasser period, then foreign minister with Sadat. I left medicine beside, and I had long discussions because I was very intrigued by people who cross that divide. And it's interesting. If we have time, I can talk about that. But certainly, you should have a certain talent to cross the divide and do it successfully. That is the point. It's the basic point. And to keep the two levels going on, that also makes lots of us very jealous. I want now to move to our commentator, Dr. Tahia Abdel Nasser. I meant to have actually to bridge also the generations, not only the specializations, but also the generations. And Tahia is a professor in English and comparative literature, published lots of articles, 2 books, the third one is coming. But the first book attracted my attention because it is between humanities and politics. Literary autobiography and Arab national struggles. That is also a nice way of crossing a divide. But I'll give her the floor then to talk. I have a lot of things here about her, but I'll give her to give us her comments on talent and that divide.
Okay, thank you to Professor Bahgat Korany for convening the panel, and to Professor Amr Shaarawi for his inspirational novel and reflections. It is a great pleasure to be on the panel and to offer some remarks on science and literature through Dr. Shaarawi's novel. Amr Shaarawi's Stoker, The Story of 100 and 1000 Moons, appeared in 2016 and won an award from the Academy of Arabic Language in Cairo for the best historical novel. A prominent professor of physics and a scientist, he has written a historical novel that details resistance to the British occupation in Egypt and Sudan. Shaarawi offers the model of an author who's deeply engaged with history and a scientist who is comfortably placed in literary culture. Like the Russian author Chekhov, who was a doctor, and Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who was a mathematician and physicist, and scientists and doctors who became writers and poets, like the example of Yusuf Idris, he bridges the gulf between science and literature. In 1959, C.P. Snow, a physicist by training and a novelist, provoked a debate on the schism between literature and science, or what he described as a problem of two cultures. He maintained that, and I quote, "The intellectual life of the whole of Western society is increasingly being split into two polar groups," end of quote, of scientists on the one hand and literary scholars on the other. I would argue that scientists, writers, and literary intellectuals who are interested in science present possibilities and a case for rethinking the problem of two cultures. How is this duality addressed by Shaarawi? Shaarawi's novel chronicles the history of 19th century Egypt during the Arabi Revolution and the British invasion. As he tells us, few readers know the history of the Battle of Tokar and the origin of a popular Egyptian expression. The epigraph reads, and I translate, "The collective memory of Egyptians expressed what happened in Tokar in 1884 with a saying they have repeated for more than 100 years. We were doomed in Tokar. Today, only a few Egyptians know what we lost in Tokar, and a small number of those understand precisely what was lost to us in Tokar." End of translation. The novel returns to one of the most central and forgotten events in the history of Egypt and tells the story in this battle in eastern Sudan. The novel opens in 1884 and narrates the years from the Battle of Tel Kabir to the battle in Tokar. It follows events during the Arabi Revolution in Egypt and the Mahdist revolt in Sudan. Opening with a letter, the narrator composes in Tokar and a stunning panoramic description of Ahmad Arabi's defeat by the British forces at Tel Kabir. The novel captures the ill-fated battle and history from 1882 to 1884. It focuses on Abdel Sabri, a former officer in the Egyptian army, who was involved in the Battle of Tel Kabir in Ismailia, and who flees to Cairo. And then afterwards he joins an armed police force that goes on a British-led campaign to the Egyptian garrison stationed in eastern Sudan. This is also his journey in search of his brother Abdel Rahim, who was a supporter of Arabi, who was disillusioned with him after his defeat and banished to Tokar. The focus of the novel is on the fall of Tokar in the hands of the Mahdists. Critic Salah Fadl has so aptly described the events captured in the novel, especially the important battles, as electromagnetic waves or pulses in Egypt's history, drawing upon Shaarawi's area of expertise. I was very struck by his description of these battle scenes and the way that history is chronicled in the novel. The novel also reflects on that period of history and on the Egyptian garrison in Sudan during the Mahdist uprising. Tokar examines the issues of the relationship between Egypt and Sudan, the national movement. It captures so well the ethos of the time it chronicles and intermeshes the pressing issues of 1882 to 1884 in the story of the protagonist. It includes evocative scenes, sweeping battle scenes, but also of the traditional Egyptian home and of 19th century Cairo. It abounds with poetic passages. The subtitle, 100 and 1000 Moons, is poetic in Arabic and richly evocative of the broad span of history foreshadowed in the novel. The phrase recurs in central moments, evoking the narrator's meditations on the fate of Egypt, the country that is fated to be defeated for 100 and 1000 moons. Shaarawi is adept in structuring his novel. It is in the form of a letter that draws the reader into the intricate plot interwoven in the historical events. The novel opens and closes with panoramic battle scenes in Egypt and Sudan. It is also full of evocations of old Cairo, the city of the dead, Al-Ataba and Al-Azhar neighborhoods, and eastern Sudan. As a comparatist, I contemplated the structure of the novel the literary devices and plot development, characters and events are intricately woven into real history and comment on the political climate. We have a scientist who addresses the human condition and contemplates the deeper meanings in history. C.P. Snow argued that poets and novelists were indifferent to science, but 20th century writers have drawn on science and created interconnections that may help us think of science and literature as opposed to the gulf between them. In Gabriel Garcia Marquez's famous novel, 100 Years of Solitude, science pervades the sections on the foundation of Macondo in the beginning of the novel. Secluded in his laboratory, the founder of Macondo devotes himself to the study of science, studies navigational instruments, discovers that the earth is round like an orange, organizes an expedition to the north, and comprehends the isolation of his peninsular region. He conceives, and I quote, a notion of space that allowed him to navigate across unknown seas, to visit uninhabited territories, and to establish relations with splendid beings without having to leave his study, end of quote. The founders of Macondo, this fictional town in the novel, are both scientists and artists who devote themselves to the study of science and read history preserved in a manuscript. Similarly, science plays an important role in Naguib Mahfouz's Children of the Alley, where the character Arafa, the hero of the novel's 5th section, represents modern science and preserves his secret knowledge of the alley in a book. These examples are far from exhaustive, and there are other examples of writers who have productively explored the interplay of science and literature. I would say that both science and literature are agents of change. The importance of scientific knowledge and literary understanding, or the understanding of broader issues, should make us rethink the separateness or the problem of two cultures. As C.P. Snow argued in the 1950s, nowhere is this more fitting than through Shaarawi's novel, Tokar, a novel by a scientist who ponders the human condition, deeply contemplates the meaning of history, and rescues the past from oblivion, and also reflects upon the future. Thank you.
You brought that element of talent that with a typical modesty our author didn't want to talk about it. Tahia, thank you. Tahia brought in actually some of the aspects that when I was reading Tokar very far away, I read it during the summer, away from AUC, and away also from Egyptian pressures. Wanted to read it. And these panoramic scenes of El-Ataba and all the places that make you very nostalgic to the old times. But also, and this is where I was a bit envious, as a social scientist, the rigor in going through the historical sources to build up a real history of the period. And I said, some historians might learn something from specialists of the exact sciences. But all along, a common element, we have these scientists that my colleagues in social sciences say they are usually parochial, narrow-minded, over-specialists of their small area. All along Tokar, this interest that I think Tahia brought up, this interest in the human condition. Interest in the human condition, fascination by that human condition, and an attempt by some sentences to reveal the oscillations, ups and downs of these human conditions when that brother talks about his brother whom he wants to see after so many years, and he has been lost in war. As you see, Tokar has left a huge impact on both Tahia and myself, and I'm sure on others who either have read it who read it that make us actually wait for the coming novel. But before that, I just throw the question to the floor for questions about things that Amr didn't reveal, most of things that he didn't reveal, either by modesty or by shyness or by whatever. So the floor is open, and to see how we can cross that divide. Please.
Yes, I have a question. You talked about going beyond the line of knowledge, going from, what you might call science to fantasy. Well, why isn't that catching on at a time when you're talking about technology, coming up with all of these very creative, out-of-the-box types of ideas?
I'll take another question and then please, I'll take it.
Thank you, Amr, for this very inspiring talk. And I would like to ask about your pattern of writing. I'm very curious. Do you actually write only when you want to write, or do you have a pattern like you write every day? And you say, I'm going to stop doing physics today and I will write fiction. How does this work? I'm just trying to compare my own experience.
First question, I'm not sure what. I could tell that younger generation don't read as much. I could tell this from my class, since I teach scientific thinking. 10 years ago, the number of reading, the number of pages I assigned reading were much higher than what I can do now. They do not read. Not only science, even people in humanities or social science, they don't want to read. They like technology, but they don't want to read. That's a problem. I think this is a very serious problem. I have two daughters. One is doing a PhD in comparative literature, and the other one is a playwright, and they didn't read my Korany. I have no answer to this. I think it's a different generation. I don't know. It's the other question pattern. I write anytime. It's another thing that I take from physics. When we do physics, when I'm working on a research problem, I get really engulfed and immersed in it. So I think of it all the time. The stories that when a mathematician sleeps and then he wakes up with the solution of a certain problem there, it's something similar to this. So I live with the text. So I have it all the time in my mind, and I could be riding a car, a bus, sitting in a meeting, watching TV. I can do it anytime. And whenever I feel like the urge, I just do it. I carry my computer. This is a technology that produces very light Apple computer, so I carry it with me anywhere. Sometimes I have nothing to do, and I just open I read what I've been writing, and then I take off. It happens. It's very. For me, it has been very easy. I get stuck every now and then, like in the plot. So I'm not sure where to go, and then I stop writing for a while, and I think about the plot for a while, and then when I see a way, I go for it.
To some extent, Amr, the tangents and the tracks and the story and your story and many others sounds like a little bit parallel signal processing of some kind in computer science. So people build something to do that, I guess. I mean, how do you do this in terms of technicality? I mean, how do you get to remember the tracks and the connectivity between each track and the other? Like, do you do mapping for this, or still trying to imagine how this is being developed?
Yeah, it depends how fast. I think it's. I used to have a good memory. And not anymore. I mean, I have weaker memory than I used. But in Toka, for instance, I saw the whole, not the whole plot. I saw the structure. And the frame, I could figure the frame of the story in my mind from the very beginning. I knew that. But, so I had to fill in the gaps. This doesn't mean that I knew the plot exactly and what I'm going, but I know the frame. Toka is the story about defeat. So it's about defeat. And I knew where I'm going, and that this brother is going to look for this brother, and so on. And so I knew that I could see it visually in my mind. I could see it. The one that's going to happen on that's going to be published soon. I mean, I finished the reading of the typesetting, and it should be finalized soon. This one I knew what I want to do, and then I had this crazy idea of how to do it, and I didn't do anything with it, and suddenly I was writing something else, and suddenly I quit writing the other novel, and I wrote this in 6 months. The one is going to be published. And then I went back and revised the other novel, and I finished the other novel, which took me 3 years. But the other novel was more difficult because it was more of had lots of personal experiences, not of myself, things that I've seen and I've heard. I knew also what I'm doing. It's always this visual. I see what I want to do. Then how things fit in, that takes time.
Hello. I was wondering, because you were saying how we're different generations now, I was just wondering what kind of advice would you give to young writers who think that they have the talent to write for the world? Yeah, that's it. Like, what advice would you give us?
Courage and perseverance, write. And enjoy what you're writing. And if you don't have to publish everything, I have lots of things that I write that I don't publish. So write, and then have courage when you think something is good enough. When you read it, what I usually do, for Tucker, I kept revising it until I couldn't change it. So you keep revising until you think, this is it, that's it. And I do the same thing. I keep revising until and you have to do something that you really enjoy and you really love. It has to be really genuine. You cannot come up with something artificial. And being genuine, it will keep you engaged. It will keep you. You will not be able to escape. You will get into it, and you will have to continue. That's what happened. I started during Mohammed Mahmoud, first Mohammed Mahmoud, November 2011. There were curfew, and I was staying at home. And then I started writing. I wrote like 6 chapters. And okay, this is not bad. And then I got hooked. And every now and then I write. I was very busy at the time, administrative work. And every now and then I write, and then after a while I got really entertained. When I started playing, going into this chapter that has a little bit of playfulness, I started enjoying it, and I would play around. And this made it more entertaining. Very action-very.
We have a question.
Yes, thank you for this interesting discussion. And basically, it's not really weird for me that Dr. Amr can be a very good writer since he is a physicist. Okay. Then really, this is what's called the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. Okay. I don't see any division between both methods of thinking. In science, we are very well defined and determined in finding only one unique answer for each particular problem, not more than one answer. But on the other hand, for the social studies, we are looking for the best answer for a specific case. And as a physicist, if you push down the scale, looking at the quantum mechanics and the quantum field theory, you will end up with what's called quantum foam with a fluctuation, okay, which is exactly matching how the people from the social study think. Maybe I used the words which is not very well understood from the other side, from the social studies, but basically this is what it is, how I see it. Then I don't think there is a division from the beginning, and I think if every physicist think deeply, I think we'll end up with many good writers, exactly like Dr. Shaarawi. Thank you so much.
I have to disagree. I don't think that everybody has that talent. I'm actually quite impressed that it's coming naturally to you. You're writing and it's coming out. It's almost as if you can't help it, and you're so engaged in both of them. I mean, when you do visit, so it's the engagement part. I know the answer to my question because I just asked your wife. You always write in Arabic, apparently, and I'm curious. Does this? It's almost you can't help it, or are you not inspired to write in English? Or it's different. I mean, and then are you curious yourself? So you're obviously an intellectual, of where this gift comes from, or how it is, and where.
Is the last question, perhaps?
Thanks. So this is a question related to the question to previous. I'm still not sure that I understand. This is a question for the whole panel. I'm still not sure that I understand the two cultures problem. So, if we look back at Pascal, he makes a distinction between the spirit of geometry and the spirit of finesse. In C.P. Snow's lecture, we have a sort of tripartition between hard sciences, humanities, and then he adds applied sciences as well. And in some sense, as if this is going to be an important part of the problem for the future, maybe it is now. I'm not sure that the distinction between a literary thinker and someone who's doing the hard sciences is the paradigmatic tension, captures the paradigmatic tension between the two cultures, because the panels presented both as observational. So in other words, the literary writer and the physicist are both observing the actual world as it is, and therefore there may be less of a gap than it seems earlier thinkers identified, like Snow and Pascal, etc. So, I mean, there are candidates for the gap, right? One could say that the gap is really deductive science on the one hand, the maths, etc. And maybe even we might include some economists in that group. And then on the other hand, people that are working inductively. That may be the gap. Or maybe just that the sciences are not self-referential. And so the problem with the people in the humanities is that they think that the inquirer disappears in the sciences. And they think it's very important to ask these second-order questions about the inquirer and not just have a method of inquiry. So, if somebody could address that question, what is the true gap between the two cultures, if there are indeed two cultures?
Just a very quick question. My question is, you mentioned Naguib Mahfouz and other authors, and I wonder if you have your own favorites within, Egyptian literature or other authors, if you have your own favorites.
Also, I have a lot of favorites on Mahfouz as well. Yeah, when I was young, I liked Yusuf Idris' short stories. As I grew up, I like. Now I really think I can understand why Mahfouz got in the way. Here, his characters are something unbelievable. The way he builds characters is incredible. It's for instance, Mahbub Abdel in Qahira 30. I mean, you wonder how many Egyptians are like this. We wonder if we were all Mahbub Abdel in one way or another. So, I mean, the character is so strong. It's strong. The characters in Harafish, characters in Sulasay trilogy, all in the Club, in the characters. I can never imagine I can build a character like this. Where does he get the ability to build characters of this sort? This is very. I love this, and I read a lot of. I read a lot of Mahfouz, but I also am trying to catch up on many things that they do. There are other very good writers. I can name writers, but for instance, I like very much Radu Ashur. I like Radu Farag, for instance. Radu Ashur is a beautiful story. It's a beautiful story, and not very well. I mean, she's known for the Granada trilogy and Tontoria and other stories, but Farag, for instance, for me is one of the most beautiful stories. I don't know why, but it resonates with me. Basati, for instance, Basati is very good. Has very nice way of telling stories about the village and so on in Egypt. Tahsin in some of his writings. I cannot think of it, but there are many good Egyptian writers. There are also many. I like Khoury, Ilyas Khoury. I like Ilyas Khoury, it's very good. There are many other Algerian writers. Khadra, Yasmina Khadra. I like Yasmina Khadra very much. There are many. I mean, I think the writing of novels has really flourished in Egypt from the 90s up to now. There's so many novels being written, and there are lots of good writers. I think the ease of publishing it is possible. I would like to comment on the question here also. I agree with you, the divide is not that big. I mean, in fact, deductive and inductive thinking might be a better line to draw, which is mathematical logic versus all the sciences. And whatever sciences are the physical sciences, the way I see them, they are more developed sciences in the fact that they deal with systems that are not complex. But social sciences, economics, and so on, these are very complex sciences that we don't have the tools to deal with them. We deal with them in a statistical manner, in an average way, but we don't have the knowledge or we've not developed the mathematics and the tools that makes us deal with such very complex systems like economic systems, social systems, and so on, in a very rigorous way. Humanities is very different, although it encompasses everything. So, for instance, if you read some of the writings of some of the physicists, it's about their physics. Some of it is very poetic. Paez, Paez, some of his books are very entertaining. For physicists, probably for non-physicists, but they would not like it very much. A big book, but it's very poetic. It's a very poetic way of writing about physics. So I agree with you. At the end of the day, we're all about seeking meaning. But for instance, in mathematics, you don't seek meaning. So all the sciences, including the humanities, they seek meaning. They try to give meaning to things. While in logic or in mathematics, you don't seek meaning. It's a clear-cut right and wrong. So that's where you can draw the line, actually, and I totally agree. Third question.
By your inspiration, it seems to come naturally in Arabic. Somebody, it's almost like you discovered it one day. It's boring.
Well, as I said, I wrote in Arabic when I was younger, but in 1997, when I was translating my abstracts from English to Arabic, I found this very entertaining. I love the experience. I love the flexibility, the expanse of how I can express myself in Arabic. And it's so entertaining. I found it amusing to try. For instance, I was working with process called focus wave modes. Translate focus wave modes into Arabic. Okay. Would you say الأنساق الموجية المركزة أو النسق الموجية المركزة أو النسق الموجية المتمركزة? Which one you would choose? I mean, then you try, and that's where diction come in Arabic. You try to say it, and the one you choose is probably the one you like more when you listen. So Arabic is a very entertaining language to write in. That's why I write in English. All my papers, all my scientific papers are written in English, but scientific papers are written in a specific style. This incident of trying to translate from English to Arabic scientific abstract of scientific papers actually caught my attention.
Well, we will have two small remarks. C.P. Snow, who launched the debate, was a physicist and a novelist. So I don't know if there is a correlation between being in physics and being talented in writing novels. So that is perhaps a hypothesis that we can go on to explore. The other thing is that I find this panel a bit deceptive, and I want to end on a warning. The way Amr talks makes crossing the divide so easy. So don't go on writing your own novels from tomorrow. And as that, I want to thank very much my two colleagues for a fantastic panel, really inspiring. Thank you very much.